If you've ever had a boss tell you you're a nobody, stay with me, because this is the story of the moment he found out how wrong he was. My boss, Brandon Locke, burst into laughter so loud it bounced off the glass walls of the executive conference room. His laugh was sharp and mean, the exact tone I'd grown used to over the last 18 months at Meridian Dataworks, a mid-size analytics firm in Minneapolis. "You're 39, Riley," he smirked, sliding my resignation letter back across the table with 2 fingers like it was contaminated. "Do you really think anyone's lining up to hire a mid-level operations manager with, what were your words, legacy skills?" He even used air quotes. I kept my face calm because I had rehearsed every insult he might throw. "Thank you for the opportunity, Brandon," I said quietly. "Opportunity?" he snorted. "Riley, I practically carried you. Without Meridian, you're nothing. You're a nobody." It stung, not because it was true, but because he'd repeated that lie so often the rest of the department had started to believe it. He leaned back in his leather chair. "Fine, go. I'll enjoy watching you crawl back." What Brandon and everyone else in that office never understood was simple. They didn't know me at all. They didn't know where I went on my lunch breaks. They didn't know who I met. They didn't know what we were building. I wasn't eating alone like they assumed. I wasn't at the gym. I wasn't taking mental health walks like HR joked behind my back. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I walked 6 blocks to a corner cafe across from the Hawthorne Tower, where I met with a woman who had shaped the U.S. tech landscape for 20 years. A woman Brandon idolized enough to keep one of her quotes framed in his office. A woman he never imagined would know my name, let alone invite me to lunch, let alone offer me something that would change everything. My name is Riley Hart, and this is the story of the lunch breaks that rewrote my entire career story. They called her a legend long before I ever met her. She was the kind of person who showed up in Forbes profiles, headlined global tech summits, and quietly built 3 analytics companies from scratch before she turned 50. At Meridian, people quoted her like scripture. Brandon worshipped her frameworks, her data-first philosophy, even tried to mimic her cadence in presentations. He had no idea she knew I existed. Her name was Dr. Serena Ellery. The first time we met, it wasn't in a boardroom. It was in a hallway at a local innovation conference where I was volunteering on a Saturday because HR wouldn't approve the travel budget. I was standing by a sign that read, "Breakout Rooms C through F," directing people who were mostly too distracted to listen. Serena stopped in front of me, tablet in hand. "Excuse me, where's the systems track?" she asked. I pointed her down the corridor and started explaining how the sessions had been reshuffled. As I clarified the logistics to another volunteer, she paused, really listened, then tilted her head. "You manage operations?" she asked. "I do," I replied, more out of habit than pride. Her eyes sharpened. "Tell me how you'd restructure a data pipeline for a company with inconsistent integration protocols and legacy endpoints." I didn't think. I just answered. I walked her through a solution I'd built at Meridian, a layered routing system with validation gates and a reconciliation loop, one Brandon had presented as his own in our last quarterly review. I didn't mention that. I just laid out the logic. Serena said nothing for a moment. She just watched me, eyes focused in that way that makes you sit up a little straighter. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a slim, minimalist card. "Email me," she said. "I'd like to hear more about how you think." 2 weeks later, I was sitting across from her at the same corner cafe by Hawthorne Tower. She called it informal. It wasn't. She didn't ask about my job title or how long I'd been at Meridian. She asked about systems I'd built that never got approval, ideas that died in draft folders, fixes that kept things running but never made it into presentations. You see systems like an engineer, not just a manager, she said during our third lunch. That's rare. I never ranted about Brandon. I didn't talk about stolen credit or promotions that mysteriously disappeared from HR's system. I stayed professional. But the more I explained what I'd built, the more her expression shifted from curiosity to recognition. After our 7th lunch, she slid a folder across the table. I'm building something new, she said. A firm designed to fix data infrastructure failures at scale. Lean, fast, practical. I need someone who understands real operations, not just buzzwords. Inside the folder was a proposal. Director of Systems Architecture at her new firm, Ellery Stratworks. The base salary alone was more than I'd ever made. Then there was equity. And the one thing I'd never had at Meridian, creative control. But there's one condition, she added. Absolute confidentiality until launch. If this leaks, our entire strategy collapses. So I lived a double life. Mornings at Meridian, quietly building the systems Brandon would parade as his own. Lunch breaks at Hawthorne Cafe, sketching frameworks that would define my future. Evenings staring at the ceiling, weighing one simple truth. I could stay where I was invisible. Or I could leave and finally exist on my own terms. My last Friday at Meridian felt like walking through a life I'd already stepped out of. People didn't look at me so much as around me. Conversations dropped when I passed. A few coworkers offered the kind of tight, awkward smiles you give someone boarding a lifeboat while you're still stuck on the ship. No one knew the real reason I was leaving. Brandon certainly didn't. He strutted through the office all morning with that over-rehearsed swagger, already rewriting the story in real time. I heard bits of it as I packed my things. She couldn't keep up with the pace, he told the CFO. She was overwhelmed, he told HR. She outgrew her abilities, he told the junior analysts. Funny how every version cast him as the benevolent leader making tough decisions. At 11:45, I slid my last notebook into a cardboard box. 21 months of forgotten credit, late-night fixes, and system diagrams Brandon had pasted into his own slide decks. I set my badge on the desk, took one final look at the rows of monitors and fluorescent lighting, and headed for the elevator. As the doors opened into the lobby, he appeared behind me. "Riley," he called, in that faux sincere tone he saved for board meetings. "Before you go, I just want to say, no hard feelings." "None," I replied. "And just so we're clear," he added, leaning in, "it doesn't really matter where you land. Companies don't hire operators. They hire leaders. And you?" He gave me a slow, pitying smile. "You're just not built for that." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. In exactly 14 minutes, he'd learn how wrong he was. Outside, Minneapolis was bright and crisp. I crossed the plaza, the air feeling lighter with every step away from Meridian's glass tower, and headed toward Hawthorne Cafe for what Serena had called our final pre-launch. When I walked in, she was already there. Dark blazer, tablet open, posture razor straight. But this time, she wasn't alone. Sitting across from her was a man I recognized instantly from industry articles and from the framed partnership slide Brandon loved to show off. Graham Kessler, chairman of Kessler and Rowan Technologies, one of the largest analytics software investors in the Midwest, and one of Meridian's top 3 strategic partners. Brandon had spent 11 months trying to accidentally bump into him. Serena gestured to the empty chair. "Riley, perfect timing. We were just talking about the integration model you proposed last week. Graham has some thoughts." Graham looked up with a steady, appraising smile. "So," he said, You're the architect. The word hit harder than any insult Brandon had ever thrown. I sat, opened my folder, and walked him through the new pipeline structure, my design, my logic, my strategy. For the first time in years, someone was hearing my work without Brandon's fingerprints on top of it. We were halfway through discussing the audit trail when Serena's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, one eyebrow lifting, then angled it toward me. Calendar alert. Brandon Locke, Kessler HQ drop-in. Hawthorne Cafe sat directly across from Kessler and Rowan's downtown offices. Brandon liked to wander over for coffee on Fridays, just in case Graham happened to be nearby. Today, he was about to get exactly what he wanted, just not the way he imagined. Serena closed her tablet, eyes glinting. Ready to watch your old world collide with your new one? My heartbeat didn't spike this time. It slowed, steady, grounded. Yes, I said. I'm more than ready. Brandon spotted us before we ever pretended to notice him. The front wall of Hawthorne Cafe was all glass, a perfect mirror when the light hit just right. In that reflection, I saw him slow mid-stride on the sidewalk, a man whose brain needed a full 3 seconds to process what his eyes were seeing. Dr. Serena Ellery, Graham Kessler, and me, Riley Hart, sitting between them with an open folder and a pen in my hand. He stopped dead. The phone in his hand was just a prop now. He lifted it to his ear anyway, pretending to take a call as he edged closer to the window, eyes locked on our table like he could rewrite the scene by staring hard enough. He's here, I murmured, not looking directly at him, just watching his reflection. I know, Serena replied calmly, stirring her coffee. Let him watch for a minute. Graham's lips curved into a knowing smile. Meridian's golden boy, he said lightly. One of them, anyway. I exhaled slowly. For the first time, I wasn't shrinking under Brandon's gaze. I was observing him from the other side of the glass. So, Serena said briskly, as if nothing unusual was happening outside. Let's continue. For the next 20 minutes, I walked Graham through the interface logic, the audit trail structure, and the predictive failure module I designed, the same features Brandon had dismissed as too complex for users and not aligned with leadership's vision. From the window, his expression shifted with every word. Confusion, then disbelief. Then something darker, the look of a man realizing he had badly misjudged someone he thought he owned. Finally, he couldn't stand it. The door swung open harder than necessary, the cafe bell jangling overhead. Conversations dipped. A barista glanced up. Brandon walked straight to our table, voice just a little too loud to be casual. Riley, he said, the crack in his tone barely concealed. What is this? What are you doing here? Before I could answer, Graham turned in his chair with the ease of someone very used to controlling a room. Good afternoon, Mr. Locke, he said. Brandon blinked. You know her? Graham's smile sharpened. We've been reviewing her system architecture for weeks. Brilliant work. That word again. Work. Mine, not his. Brandon's jaw tightened. Her? He looked at me like I'd stepped out of the wrong movie. Riley, you never told us you were consulting. I wasn't, I said. Not for Meridian. Serena finally looked up, calm and surgical. Brandon, I'm surprised to see you. I thought you were still trying to get on Graham's calendar. The hit landed exactly where she aimed it. We've spoken, he stammered. We've emailed. No, Graham corrected gently. Your assistant has emailed. Quite persistently. A soft laugh slipped from Serena. Brandon swallowed, color rising in his face. His eyes bounced between the three of us, Serena, Graham, me, like he'd walked into a meeting he didn't remember scheduling. "Riley," he said, voice dropping, anger wrapped in fake concern. "Can we talk outside?" Serena answered before I could. "She's in a meeting." "I wasn't talking to you," he snapped. That was his mistake. Graham's tone cooled. He straightened slightly, the kind of subtle shift that says, "I have spent 30 years ending people's careers with one sentence." "You will speak to her respectfully," he said, "or you won't speak to her at all." The cafe went quiet. A spoon clinked against a mug somewhere behind me, then stilled. Brandon's mouth opened, then closed, like he was trying to decide whether to apologize or explode. I stood not because he'd ordered it, but because I wanted to end the scene before he humiliated himself further. 2 minutes, I said to Serena and Graham. "I'll be right back." Serena nodded once. "We're not going anywhere." We stepped outside into the midday light, the door clicking shut behind us, sealing off the world where I was finally being seen from the one where he'd spent years insisting I didn't matter. Brandon didn't speak right away. He just stood there on the sidewalk, jaw clenched so tight the muscle in his cheek jumped. The polished, executive version of him he wore in the office was gone. What was left looked raw, cornered. "What the hell is going on?" he hissed finally. "Why are you here with them? Why didn't you tell us you had meetings with Kessler or Ellery or that you were planning something?" "I didn't know you that," I said, my voice low but steady. His volume jumped. "You owed the company transparency." I met his eyes. "Did you offer transparency when you erased my promotion requests? When you took credit for my architecture models? When you rewrote my project memos under your name? When you laughed at my resignation 10 minutes ago?" He flinched. It was small, but I saw it. "That's different," he muttered. "No," I said. "It isn't." For a moment, cars passed, and the hum of downtown drifted between us. He stared at me like he was searching for the old version of Riley, the one who stayed quiet and fixed his messes. She wasn't there anymore. "You blindsided me," he said finally. "I didn't blindside you," I replied. "You underestimated me. That's not the same thing." Silence stretched. Then he asked the question he'd been circling since he walked in. "Are they hiring you?" "Yes." "How high?" His voice cracked. "Manager? Senior manager?" "Director level," I said. His eyes widened. "That's impossible," he whispered, not because it actually was, but because he couldn't imagine a world where I was valued on my own merit instead of as a shadow under his. "And," I added, "I'll have equity." He actually stepped back half a pace, like the word had physical weight. The crack in his composure turned into a fracture. "Riley, please," he said, and for the first time since I'd known him, it didn't sound like a threat wrapped in politeness. It sounded like fear. "You know Meridian needs you. We're launching the Helix integration next quarter. I can put you on that team. I can get you more visibility with the board. I can." He swallowed, the truth finally leaking out. He needed me. He always had. He just never thought I'd have the power to walk away. "Brandon," I said quietly, "you don't get to value me only after someone else does." His mouth trembled. "Don't do this. Don't leave." "I already left," I said. He dragged a hand through his hair, desperation breaking through the polished surface. "If Serena hires you, if Kessler backs her firm, Meridian's going to be at a disadvantage." I didn't answer. He understood anyway, and that was what terrified him. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like he could bargain with guilt. "Do you really want to be the reason your old company collapses?" "No," I replied, But I'm not going to be the reason it survives either. I turned and walked back toward the cafe door. Behind me, I heard his breath hitch a small, sharp sound, like something finally snapping. When I stepped inside, the cool air and low murmur of conversations wrapped around me. Serena and Graham were still at the table, documents spread neatly between them. They both looked up as I approached. "He didn't take it well, did he?" Serena asked. "No," I said, sliding back into my seat. "But he took it exactly how I expected." Serena didn't waste time. "Good," she said. "Now that the theatrics are over, let's get back to work." Graham chuckled, the tension around the table dissolving as quickly as it had formed. We leaned in, the three of us, while the rest of the cafe went back to its own quiet rhythm. For the next hour, the conversation turned sharp, focused, and very, very real. We walked through rollout phases, client onboarding, failover plans, worst-case scenarios. Serena outlined hiring waves for Ellery Stratworks data engineers in the first pass, implementation leads in the second, strategic client liaisons as the third layer. Graham talked timelines, funding tranches, and how fast we could realistically scale without imploding. I asked questions, not as the person in the room who had to support the vision, but as the person helping define it. What happens if the first enterprise client demands customization outside our core model? How much authority will I actually have over system design versus client pleasing? If something breaks at scale, who makes the final call? Engineering, ops, or sales? Every answer was specific. No vague corporate buzzwords. No, "we'll align later." No hand-waving. Serena finally closed her tablet and folded her hands. "All right," she said. "Let's talk launch mechanics." "Launch," I echoed. "You're officially on board as Director of Systems Architecture," she said. "But your announcement, has to be timed." Graham leaned forward. "Meridian just submitted their bid for the Tri-Axis Federal Subnet contract. It's a multi-year analytics infrastructure overhaul. Big money, big visibility. Brandon has positioned himself internally as the visionary behind their Helix integration model." "Visionary," Serena repeated, dry as desert air. Generous description. I could see where this was going, but I didn't know how direct they planned to be. "We're going to release the news of your appointment," Graham said. "Exactly 7 days before the Federal Review Panel evaluates Meridian's proposal." My pulse kicked up not from fear, but from the sheer precision of it. "So they'll know," I said slowly, "that the architect behind Helix doesn't work there anymore." "And," Serena added, "they'll know that architect works for us." I exhaled, the weight of it settling in. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't sabotaging my old company's chances. This was simply aligning reality with the truth. "Meridian might contest that," Graham warned. "Especially Brandon. He's built an internal narrative that Helix was his creation." I almost laughed. He didn't even understand what Helix was actually designed to fix. "Which is why transparency is on our side," Serena said. She reached into her bag, pulled out a thick folder, and slid it toward me. Inside were printouts, time-stamped emails, draft diagrams, and architecture logs. "What's all this?" I asked. "Your work," she said. "Every proposal you submitted, every model you built, every documented iteration. We've been collecting them for months." I blinked. "How?" "Riley," she said, a small smile forming. "Did you really think your ideas only lived inside Meridian's walls?" Warmth spread through my chest, unfamiliar and steady. For the first time in years, my work wasn't being taken. It was being protected. Graham checked his watch and stood. "I have another meeting across the street," he said, slipping on his jacket. "But before I go, you should know something." He lowered his voice slightly. "Brandon has been trying to get on my calendar for nearly a year. After today, I suspect he'll assume you came here for a job offer." Serena's smile sharpened. "He saw it," she said. "Just too late." Graham rested a hand briefly on the back of my chair. "Whatever panic he's in now," he said, "he built that himself." Then he left. Serena gathered the documents into a neat stack. "Rest tonight," she said. "On Monday, everything changes." She was almost right. Everything would change. But it wouldn't start on Monday. It would start on Sunday, when Brandon did something so desperate, so reckless, that even I didn't see it coming. Sunday morning, I expected silence. Serena had told me to rest. Graham had told me to prepare. No one said anything about my old boss imploding before the weekend was over. At 9:15 a.m., my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it until the voicemail preview popped up on my screen. "Riley, we need to talk. It's urgent. Brandon Locke." I let it sit there for an hour. I wasn't his employee anymore. I didn't owe him instant access. At 10:28, another voicemail came in longer, more ragged. Then a text followed. "Please call me." "It's about Meridian. Something's wrong." A strange tightness settled in my chest. Not sympathy. Curiosity. I waited another 15 minutes, then finally hit call. He answered on the first ring. "Riley!" he gasped. "Thank God. I need your help." I sat down on the edge of my couch. "What's going on?" "It's Helix," he said, the word half choked. "The rollout, it's failing." Of course it was. "What did you change?" I asked. "Nothing," he insisted. "We followed your documents. We used the version you left in the shared folder, the simplified one." I closed my eyes. The simplified one wasn't a real blueprint. It was an early teaching model I'd put together months ago for junior staff, an unfinished structure that didn't have proper load balancing or failover safeguards. A sketch, not a system. "You weren't supposed to use that," I said quietly. "How was I supposed to know?" Brandon's voice broke. "The board is furious. They want an emergency meeting Monday. They're saying I misrepresented the development timeline." He inhaled sharply. "You have to help me fix this. Just walk me through the logic. Give me a patch, a workaround, anything. I'll compensate you. I'll credit you. Just don't let me drown here, Riley." There it was. Stripped of ego and posture, he finally sounded like what he'd always been. A man in over his head, clinging to someone else's competence. "I'm not under contract with Meridian anymore," I said. "I know," he whispered. "But you don't understand. Kessler is coming in. The board expects a functional demo tomorrow. They think I built this system. They think this was my vision." "It wasn't," I said. "And you knew that." Silence. For the first time since I'd known him, Brendan had no quick comeback, no spin. "Please," he said finally, the word raw. "They're going to cut me loose." He wasn't wrong. Boards rarely forgive a mix of incompetence and deception. But his crisis wasn't my responsibility. "You should talk to HR," I said. He let out a bitter laugh. "HR? This is past HR. Legal is already involved. They're looking for someone to blame." His breathing quickened. "Just tell me how to stabilize the pipeline. One piece, one clue." "I'm begging you." I stood up, walked to the window, and watched the quiet Minneapolis street below, the kind of calm he'd never know how to create for himself. "Brandon," I said softly, "you don't need my help." "What? Yes, I do." "No," I cut in, "because Meridian won't be running Helix much longer." Silence again. Then, wary, "What are you talking about?" I took a slow breath. "Check tomorrow's industry feeds." Before he could respond, my screen lit with a new text from Serena. "Draft finalized. Press team ready. Ellery Stratworks announcement scheduled for 7 a.m. Your name leads the release." Everything Brandon feared? It was already on the calendar. The announcement went live at exactly 7 a.m. Monday. No soft rollout, no quiet note in some trade newsletter. Serena's team had orchestrated a full-scale industry reveal press release, investor quotes, pilot clients, all of it. Ellery Stratworks launches with new Director of Systems Architecture, Riley Hart. The headline hit the Midwest tech corridor like a steel beam. My inbox detonated within minutes. LinkedIn messages from people who'd ignored me for years, emails from recruiters, old classmates suddenly so proud of me. But one notification stood out. A forwarded email from Meridian's internal mailing list sent by my former teammate, Maya Chen. Subject: Emergency Executive Meeting, all leadership required. Underneath it, she'd added a single line. They just saw the press release. I hadn't leaked anything. It was public news. It only felt like a leak because Brandon had built his entire Helix narrative on borrowed credit, and the architect had just stepped into the spotlight somewhere else. At 8:22, Maya texted again. He's pacing outside the boardroom, sweating, panicking, asking if you coordinated this on purpose. Coordinated what? My own career? At 8:30 sharp, another message. Board is in, doors closed. They asked him directly, "Why did the architect of Helix just join a competitor before launch?" I could picture it. The polished conference table, the uncomfortable chairs, the senior faces lined up like a panel of judges, Brandon at the head, trying to defend a story that had just unraveled in full public view. Then came the text that made my fingers go still over the keyboard. "They pulled your proposal logs." My heart skipped. "What do you mean?" I typed back. Her reply came fast. "Your original drafts. The ones he told you were off strategy. The ones that disappeared from the shared drive. Someone printed everything." "Who?" "Legal. Patel from Internal Audit. They've been archiving old versions for weeks." Right on cue, Serena called. "Turn on your laptop," she said. "Meridian just tried to request access to your old credentials." I frowned, already logging into the security console she'd given me. "For what?" "To see if they can accuse you of stealing anything," she said dryly. "It's textbook flailing." An alert flashed on my screen. Unauthorized access attempt detected. User, Locke admin. Maya's next message arrived seconds later. Another pause. Then, I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly. This wasn't revenge. By Tuesday morning, it wasn't just a Meridian problem anymore. What started in one boardroom had spilled into the entire Minneapolis tech corridor. Industry Slack channels lit up, private Discord servers, niche analytics forums, even the usually quiet professional subreddits were humming with the same question. How did Meridian lose the architect of Helix to a competitor days before a federal review? By 9 a.m., 3 different tech outlets had emailed asking for interviews. Serena, of course, declined them all on my behalf, for now. "We move on our timeline," she said, "not theirs." Inside Meridian, though, there was no timeline, just chaos. Maya kept me updated in real time. "Half the engineering team is in shock," she wrote. "People are asking why Brandon lied about who built Helix. Internal audit is tearing through old project folders. 10 minutes later, a voice message came through. I hit play. Maya's whisper was tight, almost disbelieving. Riley, I've never seen him like this. He's shouting in the hallway, accusing people of undermining him, threatening to fire analysts for siding with you. I didn't want anyone dragged down because I'd finally walked away, not the engineers who stayed late, not the junior staff who actually cared about the work. Is everyone okay? I texted. For now, she replied. But HR just put him on administrative review. And wait, oh my God! There was a pause. Then, Brandon's father just walked in. I stopped reading. Richard Locke, Meridian's founder, longtime CEO, now chairman emeritus, was a name people spoke carefully, like it might echo into the wrong ears. He almost never interfered in day-to-day operations. If he was stepping in, things were far worse than I imagined. Maya sent another update minutes later. They called both of them into the executive conference room. Door locked. This feels like a reckoning. I glanced at the clock. 10:32 a.m. Serena knocked lightly on my office door at Ellery Stratworks and stepped inside with 2 cups of coffee. You look tense, she said. Meridian is unraveling, I replied. She nodded, almost gently. Because the truth always has a delayed fuse, but when it goes off, it's decisive. I never wanted him destroyed, I said quietly. Serena studied me for a moment, the sharpness in her gaze softening. Riley, she said, this isn't destruction, it's exposure. He built his position on your work and his story on your silence. You didn't pull anything down. You just stopped holding it up. Before I could answer, another notification slid across my laptop screen, a forwarded internal memo from Meridian. Subject: effective immediately, leadership change, Helix initiative. I clicked. 1 sentence. Executive Vice President Brandon Locke has been removed from all operational duties pending formal review. Seconds later, Maya texted. They walked him out, badge deactivated, security on each side. It's over. I closed my eyes, letting the air fill my lungs without the familiar tightness. But I also knew something else. Meridian's reckoning wasn't finished. The Tri-Axis Federal Review was tomorrow, and that's where the final consequence, the one Brandon never saw coming, would land. The Tri-Axis Federal Review started at 8 a.m. Wednesday morning. By 8:30, the panel had already reached the section that would decide everything: system architecture origin and lead developer credentials. At 8:37, my phone buzzed with a message from a former colleague sitting in the review room. They asked who built Helix, Maya wrote. Legal presented the documents. Your documents, they showed everything. 20 years of work ethic and quiet effort settled in my chest like a steady flame. A second message followed. The committee asked why Meridian listed Brandon as the architect when all the logs point to you. They had no answer. I opened my laptop just as the official update hit the public wire. Bid disqualified. Misrepresentation of development authorship. Meridian didn't just lose Helix. They lost the entire Tri-Axis contract, millions in revenue, and a credibility wound that would take years to close. At 9:19, Maya texted again. They're shutting down the Helix branch. Senior leadership is scrambling. People are already updating their resumes. I exhaled, not with triumph, but with a quiet, exhausted relief. I hadn't sabotaged anything. I had simply refused to be invisible. Serena knocked once on my door. You ready? She asked. I nodded, closed my laptop, and followed her into the main conference room at Ellery Stratworks. Screens glowed with onboarding schedules, infrastructure maps, and new client proposals. Graham was already there, talking with our legal and implementation leads. This wasn't about Meridian anymore. This was about what we were building. Your first major project kicks off next week, Serena said, resting a hand lightly on my shoulder. You designed the architecture. Now you lead the implementation. I glanced out the window. Meridian's tower was a shape on the horizon. No longer a monument I had to orbit, just another building in a crowded skyline. My name is Riley Hart. I didn't destroy my old company. I just stopped holding it up. Sometimes you don't need revenge to win. You just need the courage to walk away from a place that refuses to see your worth and step into one that finally does.